I'll quickly mention this. The son of Snow White producer Mark Platt, Jonah Platt is the son's name. He is speaking out publicly against Rachel Zegler and blaming her for the film's catastrophic failure at the box office.
As she destroyed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of IP for Disney, but she also has destroyed her career and the careers of anybody who worked on the movie. The producers, far left-wing activists in Hollywood, are turning on her, and Disney has canceled all of Rachel Zegler's appearances on their media platforms.
In a striking twist that counters weeks of speculation regarding the Walt Disney Company's legal maneuvers, new reports suggest that Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot are anything but passive in the face of refund demands linked to the disastrous performance of the Snow White remake. Once expected to be a cornerstone of the studio's live-action portfolio, the film instead ignited a storm of criticism, disappointing theater revenues, and social media outrage, rather than accepting blame as some insiders initially implied.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
The two leading performers are reportedly taking an aggressive stance against the corporation's attempts to recover losses. This underscores the broader implications and highlights key points regarding how this issue affects stakeholders and audiences alike, serving as a reminder that even well-known figures have their own strategies when confronting extensive corporate liability demands.
After one hell of a PR tour, Disney's live-action Snow White is finally, I know, you were wondering, it's going to be hitting movie theaters next week.
The shift comes during a turbulent time for the Walt Disney Company. Once regarded as the leading force in fairy tale adaptations, Disney is grappling with a significant image setback as its reimagining of Snow White has faced an unexpectedly large wave of negative reactions.
And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them,
she's a good actress,
that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Wow. The ego on this girl is ridiculous. Wow.
Early concerns about the production's direction escalated into a full-scale uproar, with critics, casual viewers, and devoted fans alike questioning how such a foundational property could become so unrecognizable. This underscores the broader implications and highlights key points regarding the impact on both stakeholders and the audience.
And you have parents looking at Disney being like, what are you doing, guys? This is supposed to be a place where magic happens, and all you're doing is indoctrinating kids, and you're having this person be the poster child.
Suggesting that creative visions once embraced by the public may now face harsher scrutiny than ever before, this shift has raised the stakes to unprecedented levels. When the original 1937 animated masterpiece premiered, it not only launched an iconic franchise but also played a pivotal role in defining Disney's global identity.
Look no further than what Disney is doing with their woke, DEI, feminist agenda.
In contrast, this latest outing has sparked such widespread disdain that observers fear it could undermine brand loyalty passed down through multiple generations. The Walt Disney Company's top executives are reportedly dismayed by the scale of the backlash. However, in a remarkable turn, sources say Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot have no intention of simply becoming convenient scapegoats.
Tell me if this is attractive to you. Like, does this, imagine you invested into her being the face of the movie and she's the main character and she's trying to promote the movie. Would this make you want to go watch the movie when she's starring in it and she's the main character?
Their stance seems to be that the corporation should look inward at its broader creative decisions, rather than singling out the female performers. This underscores the broader implications and highlights key points about how this issue impacts both stakeholders and the audience, shedding light on how power dynamics between top-tier talent and established studios might be shifting.
As she destroyed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of IP for Disney, but she also has destroyed her career and the careers of anybody who worked on the movie.
Individuals privy to internal discussions have claimed that although Disney's legal team initially combed through contracts to see if Zegler and Gadot had breached any promotional or brand protection clauses, the actors' representatives have launched a counteroffensive. They argue that any remarks perceived as dismissive of the original masterpiece were either misconstrued or amplified by a social media environment eager for controversy.
Activists in Hollywood are turning on her, and Disney has canceled all of Rachel Zegler's appearances on their media platforms.
Furthermore, they allegedly maintain that Disney's marketing approach and script changes did more to alienate fans than any personal commentary the two women made. This highlights the broader implications and emphasizes key points about how this issue affects both stakeholders and the audience, underscoring the delicate balance between personal expression in interviews and the corporate narrative a major studio seeks to control.
We'll still offend the dwarves, but we'll CGI dwarves. So we'll guarantee no employment for little people while getting rid of this other component that warranted CGI. It was the worst decision they could possibly make.
At the heart of the controversy lies Rachel Zegler's reputation for candidness during press tours. Some of her statements, such as calling the classic Prince figure unsettling or suggesting that certain story elements were outdated, went viral across multiple platforms, fueling outrage among longtime supporters of the original masterpiece.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
Yet sources close to Zegler suggest that she believes she was following directives to emphasize the modern twist on the story, and that her words were taken out of context. They argue that if Disney intended to present the Snow White remake as a sweeping update, it cannot then hold her responsible for advocating those very changes. This highlights the broader implications and underscores key points about how this issue impacts stakeholders.
They don't know what merit is because they get paid whether they succeed or not.
And the audience alike, emphasizing that a star's promotional script often reflects a larger corporate plan rather than personal rebellion. Godot, typically more reticent in public forums, finds herself caught in a different but related bind. Known for playing strong, iconic characters, she was initially touted as an ideal fit for the evil queen. However, when questions arose about the drastic tonal and narrative shifts,
For Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen because there's another one in town.
they don't know what merit is because they get paid whether they succeed or not. Godot's cautious approach to press interviews left some corporate executives frustrated. Now, according to insiders, Godot is turning the tables, suggesting that the lack of a unified vision within the production house created an environment where no single voice could maintain a consistent messaging strategy. She and her team reportedly contest any attempts to position her as uncooperative, insisting that the real breakdown lay in the production's fragmented promotional efforts.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie.
They don't know what merit is because they get paid whether they succeed or not. Godot's cautious approach to press interviews left some corporate executives frustrated. Now, insiders report that Godot is turning the tables, suggesting the lack of a unified vision within the production house created an environment where no single voice could maintain a consistent messaging strategy. She and her team reportedly dispute any attempts to portray her as uncooperative, insisting the real issue lay in the production's fragmented promotional efforts.
Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's how.
And you wonder why people are turning from this stuff in droves, right? Like that the original Prince was stalking her. I don't even really remember what Snow White was about either. The midgets gangbanged her, whatever it was a wholesome family film.
Many longtime enthusiasts lamented the absence of the original masterpiece's whimsical spirit, which was replaced by modern moral lessons and reworked on-screen personas that seemed to overshadow the fairy tale charm. Zegler and Godot contend that such sweeping creative decisions were beyond their control, a claim supported by leaked internal documents indicating that top executives knew the reimagined role of the dwarfs might perplex the public.
And now they've turned it into woke trash. Check this out for Men Wokeness. Disney's Snow White said that harm should befall Trump and his voters. Do not see this film.
This highlights the broader implications and underlines key points about how this issue impacts both stakeholders and the audience, suggesting that although stars can shape public perception, the structural elements of a remake often rest squarely on the studio's shoulders. When the first glimpses and trailers finally arrived, discontent quickly became a global trend.
So she's basically a violent, hysterical lunatic who wants babies. She's very concerned that her daughter will have to give birth to a child, which generally grandmothers think is a fantastic thing for their daughters. I don't think Trump is doing any forced impregnations.
With social networks overflowing with critiques, many claimed the remake had strayed too far from its source material. Critics seem torn between praising the progressive reinterpretation and condemning the loss of the original masterpiece's heart. Hashtags denouncing the changes soared, and many longtime Disney enthusiasts expressed feelings of betrayal. Although the corporation had pinned its hopes on star power, now that box office figures have failed to meet expectations, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot appear ready to mount a robust defense, contending that no performer could salvage a film so at odds with its roots.
It's just, why are the worst people constantly empowered in our society? It is going away, but it doesn't go away.
Social media was flooded with critiques claiming the remake had strayed too far from its source material. Critics were divided between praising the progressive reinterpretation and condemning the loss of the original masterpiece's essence. Hashtags denouncing the changes surged, with many longtime Disney fans expressing feelings of betrayal. Although the company had pinned its hopes on star power, now that the box office results have fallen short of expectations, Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot appear ready to mount a robust defense. They argue that no performer could salvage a film, so at odds with its roots. This highlights broader implications and key points regarding how this issue impacts stakeholders and the audience alike, underscoring the way brand reputation relies on staying true to the spirit of a beloved classic. Tensions reportedly escalated inside Disney's executive offices, where anxious stakeholders demanded explanations for the film's underperformance. Merchandise tied to the production languished in stores, and streaming schedules were revised to steer attention toward other upcoming titles. According to multiple accounts, Disney initially considered seeking compensation from the lead actors to offset these commercial setbacks. However, this plan has now faced fierce opposition. Zegler and Gadot's representatives argue that shifting blame to the on-screen talent is a diversion from corporate missteps. This highlights broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue affects both stakeholders and the audience, probing the challenging question of whether a studio can recoup investment losses by faulting the very talent it hired to bring a film to life. Observers note that this unexpected pushback from the stars echoes a wider transformation in show business culture. Once, major production house CEOs typically absorbed criticism rather than risk adversarial relationships with their own headliners. However, with social media now offering actors a direct line to the public, old power dynamics are shifting. While Disney officials arguably had valid business concerns, as hundreds of millions were at stake, Zegler and Gadot's readiness to dispute any refunds or financial penalties indicates that collaboration may have morphed into confrontation. This highlights the broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue impacts stakeholders and the audience alike, implying that the era of unilateral studio dominance in the narrative may be waning. Legal analysts following the standoff have noted how unprecedented it is for a studio to formally accuse its headliners of damaging the brand image, especially after having made the casting decisions. However, some suggest that Disney felt it had few alternatives, given the staggering scale of the negative reaction and the real-world consequences of lost revenues and tarnished family trust. The more surprising aspect, they say, is how directly the leads are responding, framing themselves as advocates for honest storytelling who merely fulfilled the corporate mandate. This highlights the broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue impacts stakeholders and the audience alike, shedding light on the precarious balance between a performer's public persona and the wide-reaching authority of a corporate giant. In parallel, Disney's overall cinematic trajectory has come under scrutiny. A series of Marvel spin-offs yielding lukewarm returns, coupled with stalled attempts to revive nostalgic franchises, has raised concerns that the entertainment titan may be losing the spark that once made it unbeatable. The Snow White remake, originally pitched as a reimagining that would honor the classic while updating outdated storylines, has instead become emblematic of many complaints about placing modern messages above the emotional core of the original. Zegler and Gadot argue that any narrative failings stem from corporate decisions made long before they joined the project. This highlights broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue impacts both stakeholders and the audience alike, exemplifying the tensions that can arise when beloved source material is subjected to extensive reworking. Though a handful of defenders champion the film's contemporary angles, the vast majority of Disney's casual viewers and faithful enthusiasts have leveled harsh critiques at how the production was both developed and marketed. Skeptics increasingly suggest that the public relations mishandling, along with the film's reluctance to own its departures from the original masterpiece, did more harm than any individual interview comment. Zegler and Gadot's refusal to shoulder financial blame deepens the rift, leading many to question whether the corporate behemoth truly understands its audience. This highlights the broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue impacts both stakeholders and the audience alike, spotlighting the danger of underestimating the emotional attachment fans have to decades-old stories. Hastily formed damage control measures appear insufficient, with Disney spokespeople offering little more than vague statements hinting at creative freedom and bold storytelling choices. Meanwhile, fan demands for a transparent explanation of how the remake veered astray remain unanswered. The two leading performers have, in essence, seized this vacuum of information to articulate their own version of events, claiming they delivered what was asked of them and more. This highlights the broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue impacts both stakeholders and the audience alike, accentuating the paradox where the studio's silence may actually strengthen the actor's stance, as they can point to unclear guidelines from higher-ups. Among fans, the emotional tenor ranges from sadness to outright anger, with many expressing that the Snow White remake stands as a symbol of a fundamental shift away from the Disney they once cherished, one that upheld timeless narratives without overshadowing them with over-engineered modern spins. Now, the spectacle of the film's stars rebuking the refund demands suggests that a deeper fracture is emerging, one that places creative talent and corporate imperatives on a collision course. This highlights the broader implications and underlines key points regarding how this issue impacts both stakeholders and the audience alike, raising the notion that even icons of family entertainment can undergo very public battles that tarnish the perceived magic they once embodied. Questions about the next steps persist. Will Disney formally press for financial compensation in the courts, or will cooler heads prevail in private negotiations? Will Zegler and Gadot amplify their stance, possibly revealing behind the scenes details that shift blame onto Disney's leadership? Will audiences decide to forgive, forget, or boycott future live-action endeavors? One certainty is that the Snow White remake, once expected to be a highlight in Disney's modern repertoire, is now remembered for how drastically it veered from the original blueprint and ignited a feud between corporate power and marquee performers.